Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Joined now by the outstanding Mark Wogenrich, SI.com. Mark, welcome back. Great to have you with us again.
Always appreciate it, Steve. Thanks.
Never a dull moment. So
you and me both.
Yeah, never a dull moment. All right. So everyone saw what happened with Ohio State, and you've been in all the press conferences, both home and away, and the comments that have been made. With the comments that have been previously made, especially after the Ohio State game, were you then in any way, shape, or form surprised by the move Sunday, or did you think it would come later?
By the move Sunday, yes. Initially, James Franklin's explanation about it Monday made complete sense. It's just, I put it in a historical context with him that he's never been that coach to make the move in season.
That's right.
And yeah, so that's I guess where my head was at. I just simply wasn't expecting it to be Sunday. It completely makes sense because I think James ascribes to that management style that says don't rush a decision, but then don't delay the action when you've made the decision, if that makes sense. That's pretty much what he said. You know, once he decided to make that was what he was going to do, he had to do it. And that gets him in the market that much sooner. It also gets his team I think it gets his team actionable in the situation now where they can hit a refresh last couple of games, get some new ideas, think critically, about where they were, and make that transition. Maybe reinvigorate people to make that transition. So ultimately, especially after yesterday, after hearing James talk about it yesterday, it was no surprise at all then.
Let's take Ohio State and Michigan. What was your evaluation of what you were seeing with the Penn State offense against Ohio State and Michigan?
Well, going back to Saturday, I think you've talked about it. I thought they ran fairly well.
Yes, they did.
Against Michigan. I mean, I looked at some of the numbers. Like first down, they averaged 6.5 yards a carry on first down. So that was the kind of football that they want to play. That was scheduled football, right? But second down was not good. It was, Ohio State's third down was their detrimental down, obviously 1 for 16. It felt like more second down was the issue, was an issue against Michigan because if you average 6.5 rushing, their average third down distance, had the stats up, was 5.5. So they were gaining a yard essentially on average on second down. They weren't then continuing what they were doing. And I think it also felt like against Michigan they weren't giving the Drew Aller at least an opportunity to go in rhythm, or to gain a rhythm. And James Franklin had said that. He said that after the game, and we kind of expanded upon that Saturday. And you can run by throwing, so they could have given him some run type throws instead of actually just running into those looks. And I think by the third or fourth quarter against Michigan, at that point you're asking Drew to kind of assume all the responsibility, and it just didn't look like he had been positioned to do that, or at least he wasn't put in a position to do that. He accepted the blame. Drew accepted the blame. He's going to do that. Players are going to do that. But you can't expect him to go through this game of this insistence on first down that they were going to run against a look and not give him at least some opportunities to throw, or at least to set him up for the third, fourth quarter when he's going to have to be in position to do it.
And I'll just at least back that up with the statistical part of it. Penn State had 22 first down plays, and Mark's exactly right. I felt the same way. They ran the ball very well on Saturday, but 19 of the 22 calls on first down were runs.
Yeah, I think he only completed one of his passes on first down.
One of three. So. Yeah, one of three. Yeah. Okay. So now how interested are you with this Saturday I mean, it's the same personnel. I got that. But as to what it might look like on Saturday, how interested are you by this?
Very much. I'm interested in how the running backs coach and the tight ends coach handle the quarterback, if that makes sense. Because I think they need to be in a position, again, I think they need to be in a position to make Drew Aller comfortable, or to give him at least tools in plays that will make him comfortable. There probably should be more of a mix. Rutgers is not a slouch defensively at all.
That's right.
But Penn State's going to have opportunities because they're going to have offensive possession opportunities because Rutgers is not really – they're not in any, an offensively really challenging offense right now. They're struggling to throw the ball. They came up scoreless against Iowa. So I think Penn State's defense is going to give that offensive position to produce in this game. But the defense, Rutgers' defense is going to test them quite a bit. So I think Jaywan Slider and Ty Howell have to be able to, at this point, give Drew some confidence, even a confidence in the sense of having him throw the ball. I remember after the Maryland game, Drew talked about feeling kind of this renewed confidence, something that he had in high school when he was in an offense that threw 50 times a game, and he seemed to have felt that at Maryland, and that's a function of the kind of defense they're playing, all those sorts of things. But to me, I think their biggest step is to kind of reinvigorate the confidence in Drew and then in the passing game on top of that.
Big picture now. I mean, there's still more games to be played in this season, but they've already now played Ohio State and Michigan. It didn't go well for Penn State in either one. So are they any closer? Are they the same or further behind, in your opinion, after watching how it played out this year?
Yeah, well, if you subscribe to the argument that if you're standing still, you're falling behind, then they fell behind. Now, these were not blowout games like some of them have been in the past, and I go back to that Ohio State game, and if Curtis Jacobs' touchdown stands, if there's not a penalty between one of the best defensive players in the country against maybe the best offensive player in the country.
Yep.
We could be talking about a completely different situation here. I think that's how close some of the margins are. But when you're kind of in that margin of being very close, it can feel wider than maybe it truly is. It's like, Penn State is at 35,000 feet as a cruising altitude, but those two teams are at 38,000 feet. And, this is probably not a great analogy because the altitude gets thinner up there, so it's easier to climb. But there's always that belief, there's always that idea that just getting to the top level, the elite level, is harder than getting through the incremental levels below that. So I think they're probably as close as they have been. It's just that, again, if you're static, then it feels like you're falling further behind them.
Yeah. Okay, so the team now in this particular week, it's going to be interesting to see how they react to all this. But what's interesting is that people are forgetting it is senior day. It never really has come up. Right? I always find that what's interesting about senior day is just because somebody runs through the tunnel doesn't mean they're coming back, but I'm always interested in who actually runs through it. What about you?
Absolutely, and especially now, I believe this the last year of the COVID extra year of eligibility?
I think next year.
Next year, yeah.
If you combine redshirting with COVID, I think it's next year.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Is either this year or next year. I think you're probably right. That probably goes next year. So, absolutely, that takes a little bit of it off because that's a decision Sean Clifford made his decision too. That was probably, at least to end the season, after the season. But yeah, there are players. That always intrigues me, of who decides that this is going to be their last go around. From many perspectives, and it's interesting to me that this is not this result, being 8-2 now, potentially 10-2, is not the result that players like Olu Fashanu and Theo Johnson, Adis Isaac, and Curtis Jacobs came back for. Right? They will tell you that. They will tell you that flat out. That we didn't come back to go 10-2, but they also didn't come back to go 8-4 after losing like the two games that they probably on their schedule that they wanted most.
Right.
So I mean, I get a sense. I was there in the post game with Theo Johnson, and to see the level that he cares.
Yes.
About the past, present, and future of this team. There's still a core of guys that they're going to try their level best to make sure that this team does not go 8-4, 9-3, whatever you want to say. He's bought in. Like a guy like Theo Johnson he's just completely bought in, and that's the kind of player that you want to see, at least to go out, head held high, having given pretty much whatever he possibly could have, and having an opportunity to go 10-2 and back to another New Year's Six bowl.
Yeah. It's when you look at the entire landscape. Has anybody played two of the top four teams in the college football playoff rankings? I think Penn State's the only one, right? Maybe, because Ole Miss has played Alabama and Georgia, but huh?
Right.
Is there anybody else?
No, but Notre Dame is not. Notre Dame played one, right? Because they didn't play Michigan this year.
Right.
No, when James Franklin says we've lost the number 1 and number 3 teams in the country, he's not wrong about that. There's sort of that is absolutely certifiable. As that's factual. So this is 10-2 to losing to those two teams can feel Groundhog Day-ish.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's and I think that is where it comes down, is that another back to back. If you go 20-4 regular season over the last 2 years and 20-0 and 0-4, it still feels like, as you asked before, you're not getting any closer to those two teams. And I felt that feels like that's what this season was supposed to be about. And coming up short both ways, while then again 10-2 and having just the unfortunate luck of Ohio State and Michigan being de facto on your schedule this year, and also having the teams that they do, and you putting everything into it and just not getting there, that's frustration all around. I'm sure in Lash, the frustration is probably an order of magnitude higher than it was in Beer Stadium.
Right, no question. Next year, it's a 1-8 team. Next year includes Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. And contrary to popular belief, just so people know, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, and Caleb Williams will be in the NFL. So all three have to replace their quarterbacks next year.
Right.
There's no Michigan until 2026. The playoff expands to 12. Is that going to give everybody, or can it give a better gauge on where the program is with those factors in play?
Yeah, it absolutely should, and they're going to go into I think they'll go into next season, assuming that the arc continues upward now after this year, right? That assuming they do finish 10-2, and nothing else happens after this to change that narrative.
That's right.
Going into next year, coming into this year, you're saying you've got to beat one of those two teams. Going into next year, I think you believe you have to be in that 12-team playoff in the first year. Having not made it through as close as you've come several times, I think Penn State has to feel like that the 12-team playoff is an absolute kind of almost a baseline for next year. It has to be an absolute goal to get in there. And, that would be a mile marker for the program next season, absolutely.
Yeah, I know I jumped way ahead on that. I just took the clock and kicked it ahead 12 months for you. So
You're not the only one doing that, I'm sure.
All right. Well, and I'll ask one more, Mark. I mean, obviously there'll be a timing as to when a new offensive coordinator is named. It's going to be sometime, you would guess, between December 4th and December 20th. And the reason is the 4th is the Monday after the championship games, and the 20th is National Letter of Intent Day. So it's going to be somewhere in there. How interested are you going to be by the perceived style of this offensive coordinator? Because you do have quarterbacks that do bring certain things to the table that are different.
I think that's got to be one of the very biggest issues for an offensive coordinator coming in. Maybe not so much even the style that they've run, but what are they able to, or how are they able to tailor what they do to specifically Drew Aller, secondarily Bo Pribula, and then the offense in general. It always felt like James Franklin that the 16 and 17 offense with that particular talent and that coordinator was what James generally the style they wanted to run. Not that he's not adaptable, that he's committed entirely to running like the RPO kind of thing. But that's just generally the style that he would like to go. He likes running quarterbacks. And they don't necessarily have that right now, at least in Drew, to run that particular style. Not that Drew can't run, but that style doesn't – I don't think that style suits his strengths fully. So that the style of the next coordinator, while they could have run whatever, air raid, anything like that, if they – bring elements of that to Drew and fit it to him, that to me is the most important thing, is being able to is being adaptable while having something that you can install quickly, that Drew can install quickly, and then get going. I don't think you want to get into a situation where it was like Sean having to do it, going through a new offense every 18 months, kind of thing, which is essentially what Sean Clifford did. I don't think you want to be in that with Drew. He needs the next 2 years in something very specific.
Mark, always a pleasure.
If he gets to the next 2 years.
Right. No, I know what you mean. Mark, it's always a pleasure, Mark. Thanks so much for the time, the analysis, and everything. Appreciate you.
Yeah, talk to you too. Thanks, Steve.
Mark Wogenrich, SI.com.